Hello, this is Charles Alvarez, CEO of Cornerstone Growth Solutions. Welcome to another episode of our podcast. Today, we are blessed to be joined by Emily at Vendovation that are doing some really cool stuff that she's going to be sharing with you today. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure to be here this morning.
My pleasure's all mine. So, before we get started about the business, tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you landed at this spot at Vendovation.
Well, it was not typically like how, I often joke that I'm always amazed by people that have a very well visioned path and then execute that path and end up right where they thought they were going to end up.
Yeah,
and
I don't know what that looks like.
yeah, but um, yeah, from the get-go, actually, from the time I graduated from college, I've always been given an opportunity to start something from ground zero. And so whether that was like starting it's funny, a day labor temp agency where people showed up every morning and they were dispatched to work and paid at the end of their day, to selling CAD/CAM software for highway road sign design for cities and counties and state DOTs where there hadn't been, it was a new technology, and then getting into asset management, inventory control, and getting into like hardware, software integration, managing those assets on the side of the road, whether they were signs or other city and county, state infrastructure. And lo and behold, had an idea for a medication dispensing device. And sharing that conversation with one of my dearest friends who said, "You really need to talk to my brother," which led to another conversation, and then was like, "Oh, here, can you develop this market?" And then I kind of made the move to what I call kind of automated dispensing solutions. And here at Vendovation, we are kind of the back end, the software, the brains behind a lot of those solutions that are on the marketplace. So we work with a multitude of different manufacturers. But yeah, it was definitely kind of one of those, interesting routes
Yeah.
on how you get there.
Well, in my opinion, the ability to take something from the ground floor and build it, I've always thought is a harder skill set than taking an established brand and growing it. So I'm just curious, as you've grown your career, because one thing I've always said, it's to me, it's a lot easier to sell for Oracle than it is for a company that just started basically. So before we kind of get into what Venovation does, tell me, why do you think you have been able to be successful in working with those companies from the ground up and helping them be successful from a sales standpoint?
I'm not good at following rules. No, it's like I love solving problems, and I love the challenge of, okay, hey, we have this product or this service, what do we need to do to get, customers basically. And whether it was, I think a lot of it has to do with just being really inherently interested in problems and coming up with the solutions. And also the sense of, I don't know, curiosity, in really, I love understanding a business, like in general, how does it work? And how to make it work more efficiently, or how to, like drive sales. And sometimes you have to really think outside the box to make something work. A good friend of mine, we were just talking last week, reminiscing about how I needed workers to fill these day labor jobs that I had gotten from different manufacturing companies. And I was really short on labor. And so I targeted apartment buildings where I thought there might be people that need work. And I put on rollerblades and rollerbladed up and down apartment buildings, putting flyers underneath doors because like I needed workers, And so I think, part of it is I'm willing to get my hands dirty, where oftentimes leaders aren't, willing to necessarily get in the trenches. And that's something that I have not been afraid to do. So
Very cool. So tell us a little bit about how you arrived at Vendovation, what your role there is, and what attracted you to Vendovation.
Yeah, well, I had previously been working for a company where Vendovation was our software provider. And Vendovation did not have any of their own marketing or sales or anything like that. And when the two companies parted ways, Vendovation asked me to come to their company and be their sales director and build marketing. I mean, really, there wasn't anything. There wasn't a single sales slick with the Vendovation name on it. There was no sales strategy. There were no salespeople. There was nothing. And so Cal Bauer, who hired me, I said, "Are you sure about this?" He goes, "Yeah." I go, "Well, we're starting with nothing." I was like, he goes, "Just do what you normally do. You'll be fine." And
Okay.
I was like, well, he had experience with working with me at that other company where I did develop their whole intelligent dispensing solution department that continued to grow. And we just, implement those same strategies for us. And kind of welcome that opportunity. And again, yes, it was starting from ground zero, but we had a customer base through those customers that were using our software.
Mhm.
And so I could use them as a springboard. And the beauty about having a good product and having good relationships with your customers, they're not afraid to give you good references.
Right.
And that's what we did, and built upon, their good business and built out the website, what our services are, defining that, implementing a CRM where everyone goes, at the CRM, but you need it.
Do. You absolutely need a CRM. I don't know how sales teams do it without a CRM. I just don't know.
Well, you get to a certain point, especially at my age, where there's just not enough RAM and we can't do a data dump. There is no more.
Yeah.
You need the CRM to keep the information handy. And I always say, if I were to drop dead someday, I want people to be able, someone to be able to pick up the ball, right, and run
Right.
with it. And if you're not documenting anything or not, communicating what you're doing and being able to replicate what you're doing, having someone else come in and do that, it's like you're gone, and then what happens?
Right. Right.
So
Right. We'll get into some of the strategies that you have used that's been successful for you. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about who your target market is for Vendovation and what challenges your target market has to be facing for it to make sense for them to work with you.
Yeah, so we work in a number of different markets. So one might be the K-12 school market, where different schools, they want their students to be able to use a student ID at a vending machine. And there are a lot of schools that have student lunch programs that use the vending machines to deliver lunches to also get reimbursed, federal reimbursement for lunches. And it's a way in which a system can be implemented that is frictionless, and students can just simply use their ID. um, Everyone can get what they need. All the student can, whether they have money or don't have money, or on a school lunch program or not on a school lunch program, um, to working with like EMS providers across the country where we are delivering a solution to track lot numbers and expiration dates and all of their medical supplies, but yet maintaining control with the actual hardware, but providing access and real time reporting. So that same kind of example is replicated in other industries, whether it's IT and employers using it for IT peripheral management so that employees can get what they need. Um, and then also automated retail solutions, which are kind of interesting in different projects and integrating touch screens and other, whether it's coupons or gashapon, little, anime um, I would say trinkets, but that might not be the the correct word to use. But all sorts of different applications. But again, all around automated dispensing, whether that's retail or asset management, inventory control, and one of your questions is regarding what are those obstacles that customers might have. Um, One of the things that I think that really came out of COVID was the need to control inventory, and that there is a lot of shrink that goes on. And shrink also, goes right to your bottom line. So if you can save on that, right? But also the need to have those supplies available when you need them. And, a lot of businesses were negatively impacted during COVID. And I think, our business, um, we saw an uptick. I mean, our business, yes, was impacted, but in other ways. But we continued to grow because of that value proposition, in providing, opportunities for retailers to offer their retail goods without human intervention, to also from the supply chain management standpoint with, whether it's manufacturing companies, companies in healthcare where they can provide supplies to their employees so that they can get the job done. Um, and use those supplies, in a manner where it's not wasteful or they're not over ordering. They're ensuring first in, first out. So there are so many different areas where waste can be reduced, that, in providing that value proposition, that's kind of where we shine. So, even in a market downturn, companies look to how to, maximize their inventory, their
Right,
supply.
right,
So
right. It's interesting. I actually started my career at Accenture, and they were talking about how difficult it was to, manage supply chain, manage inventory. And what's funny is with all the technology advances that we have, a lot of companies have the same problem, and a lot of it is because it's they were solving the wrong problem. And it sounds like what you guys do is you are solving the right problem, because otherwise you would not have left your previous position to come here, because it sounds like you guys actually know how to analyze the problem and fix the right problem. Is that correct?
I'd like to say yes. I think so. I don't know. I mean, it's just getting down to it. And that, part of that curiosity, though, is in working with, you probably realize that at Accenture, when you're working with, different companies and different industries, it's like really kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts. Like, how do they do business? How would the solution fit in their, everyday standard normal operating procedures to really create that, employee kind of like enablement, providing them what they need, but in a way that is seamless and doesn't provide, that doesn't have all of these like complications, to the process. And a lot oftentimes people, I always, if I'm at a trade show and or working with other salespeople or with our distributors, that are like, are you kidding me? A vending machine, and they kind of snicker at it because it is kind of, seems like one of those overly like simple, stupid solutions. But I can't tell you how many people, after implementing it or somebody's like, why didn't I think of this? Like, why? And it's so rewarding to see, especially, in a company that maybe doesn't have really anything in place except for that supply closet, to then actually standing something out. And they're like, whoa. And you look at, yeah, there's the shrink factor, but there's also the cost of administration, right? And now all of a sudden you have real time reporting, and the boss says, "Hey, what are you budgeting for next year?" Well, boom, in under 10 seconds you can see exactly what's gone out the door year to date, and do those budgetary projections much more efficiently and quicker, and have real data as opposed to that guesswork that sometimes happen, or I call it the eyeball, where you kind of look and go, well, I think. So, yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
So What are some of the, so though you talked about the challenges, what are some of the benefits or some of the end results that your clients experience by working with you and Vendovation? And can you give me some examples of what that looks like?
Well, on like an extreme case, it's, huge cost savings. So, I have one agency that we worked with that was spending $2.7 million annually on medications. And after a full year of implementation, we got them to under a million. But success really came in, kind of twofold. And that is that because they were ordering smaller quantities um, more frequently, as opposed to doing like a huge order, quarterly or every 6 months. What they found by reduce or by actually ordering more frequently, they weren't expiring products. So they had so much waste just around things expiring and then having to throw them away. So they never even got used. Um, and so we see a lot of success with another customer. They were doing all of their restocking at a hospital. So even if they didn't have a transport to a patient, for having to transport a patient to the hospital, let's say after they gave them epi, that medic crew was still having to go to the hospital to replace that medication. Well, just on that one vehicle, they figured out that they were saving um, like $5,000 a month on the one vehicle and the time out of service, and found that by actually managing those medications on site and having them available meant that they were in service longer. They were reducing the amount of time, like just of that, well, like I said, the out of service time. So um, it's interesting, these different areas in which a company saves money, or just simply on shrink. All of a sudden, um, this one company was spending $500,000 a year on gloves, and you need to provide gloves, but all of a sudden you put them in the machine, you're still providing access to those gloves to those employees, but okay, you've cut your glove spend annually in half without sacrificing or compromising, employee safety.
Right, right, right. That makes all the sense in the world. Very, very cool. So, in your mind, there's a lot of companies out there that claim to do the same thing that Vendovation does. In your experience, because I'm sure you've had multiple exposure to your competitors as well as other companies that claim to do the same, what would you say is the main difference or differentiator between Vendovation and some other companies that compete in your space?
Um, well, I could get into some technical things,
Sure.
but at the end of the day, if all things are equal, we're going to outshine people in customer service. I mean, if you have two companies that are doing exactly the same thing or very similar, yeah, there are some things technologically speaking that we do a better job with integrating with employee badges and offering API integration and all sorts of things from a technical standpoint. But at the end of the day, we I think our company does an excellent job at doing what we say we're going to do, delivering our solution, and nothing is perfect. And there are going to be
Right.
times where a customer needs to pick up, the phone and needs help and support. And we really, that's where we want to shine and know that, a customer can pick up the phone and call someone and actually speak to a human being and not be put through a whole, maze of different phone prompts to get to the right person. So that, that really is super important to us. And one of our big market segments that's taught us a lot is EMS. And emergency medical service providers provide, kind of they pride themselves on their response time. And we've kind of taken one from their playbook, and that's important to us. I mean, if a customer's calling you for help and you've got a piece of equipment that really does play a major role in their daily ops, you need to keep them up and running. It doesn't do us any good, right? I mean, if you have an angry customer or equipment down, that has a
Step.
negative impact not only on their business, but on ours as well. It's not a good reflection, on us. So we want, our customers to be up and running, be happy and be really utilizing the solution to the best of their ability. So,
Very cool. Very, very cool. Well, thanks for that. So you mentioned earlier some strategies that you have used to work with these, companies that, don't have a CRM, are pretty new to the market. They may have a couple of customers or clients, like you mentioned. What are some of the strategies that you have found to work well in helping build a brand that is just getting its legs underneath them?
yeah, it's you gotta hit it with all you got. No, but from it's brand recognition. How do you create brand recognition? And I think from the very early days of, I don't know if you even remember, there was this it was called guerrilla marketing. And
Yeah,
I mean, so much of what that seminar, really kind of taught me was really you do have to think outside the box, and how do you get the attention? And back then we didn't have the online marketing that we have now, or the social media or anything. But I am still a proponent of that. And one of the takeaways that stayed with me is like, you need to make 5 impressions on a potential customer to develop any sort of name recognition. So I think of like, how are those 5 ways that I'm going to get that done? Whether it's a direct mail piece, a phone call, a web ad, a print ad, and then print ads aren't used very much, but there are specific, trade journals that I target that still are viable, I think viable options and good sources, but you do have to really, I mean, that's been my base, is like, how do I get those 5 impressions, and how do I get them done quickly? Because, as the more time it takes you to get to market, the less money you're making.
yep,
You're losing money.
yep, that's exactly correct. That is exactly correct.
And so, and you also have to think about, okay, as you are, growing that business and really, honing those marketing efforts so that you can make those five impressions and get on a person's radar screen, but it's also maintaining your existing customer base and growing that business within the customer, within your existing customer base. And the whole adage that it's, cost you a lot more money to gain or to gain a new customer than keep one. And that is, something that is also kind of one of those cornerstone philosophies. And how do you continue to service your customers and provide value so that yes, you can maintain that business, but also build that business, and while growing that,
Right.
and reaching the new customers. So, and it's also easy, it's a heck of a lot easier when you, for me, believe in what I'm doing and believe in our solution, and we are providing value. Um, and when you're having fun doing it, it's amazing, how effortless something can, really becomes. Um, and so yeah, that's part of it too, is having fun while you're doing it.
Right. Right.
So
Completely. 100%. 100%. So, Emily, is there anything that you would like the audience to know that we have not covered yet in terms of how to build the business, how, what elements you have to have in place to really have a successful sales result? Is there any experience that you think would be valuable that you would like to share to our audience that we have not covered?
yeah, when building a team, um, I have always looked for people that, there are certain characteristics, like you want someone, when building a team, people that have that natural tenacity, that show initiative, that, aren't easily discouraged. Because there are a lot of, yeah, we've had a lot of success and everything, but there are times which are exceptionally humbling.
Hmm.
And, how are, myself as a leader, but as an individual, you know, when the chips are down, how do I respond? and because we're all going to fumble the ball at some point. And so, in building the team, it's like, how do you recover from a fumble? How do
Yeah.
you show up? And having that grit and that fortitude every day, and also, how important it is to be an individual that also is taking care of yourself, you know, um, and have that competitive drive, especially when you're building a sales force. I mean, do you want someone that's like, oh, I don't care if I win? I'm
Right.
okay on the B team. I want A players. As a young person, and that I always wanted to be on the varsity team. That was really important. No, I might not win, but that you show up every single day, putting your best foot forward, because if you do that and you grind it out, you will succeed,
Yeah.
you know. So that's
I've always said that we can teach anybody any skill set that they want as long as they have the hunger and drive and competitive nature to be good at it. And I will say that is the one thing that I cannot teach. I mean, if you have found a way to make that happen, please let me know. But number one, if you don't have that competitive drive, you're probably not going to be very successful. And number two, I think you're 100% right. I don't think small and mid-sized businesses can afford to have C players or even B minus players. You've got to have
trustworthy.
you've got to have A players. Otherwise, those B players will drain you like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so, and it's something that, actually a bunch of friends of mine that are women that are, in business and everything. And how you show up is so important. And even as, from the time that you're young and ambitious and you think you've got all the answers to, okay, I've been beat up a little bit. I've raised my family, but man, the amount of knowledge and wisdom that one has at the point, and how are you continuing to drive forward,
Right.
even as an individual, and what you bring to the game. And, that's the other thing that I'm kind of finding too is oftentimes, even very minded, sales oriented minded organizations, kind of want a very, young and, think that they're really hungry and everything. Well, there are those that are a little older, a little seasoned, that are just as hungry, that are just as valuable, that really I've found recently can even, have the drive to outshine the young ones.
Right. Right. Right.
So anyhow.
Emily, thank you so much for being with us. If somebody wants to learn more about you or Vendovation, what is the best way for them to learn more or to contact you?
Yeah, yeah, you can just reach out to me at emily@vendovation.com. And our website is www.vendovation.com as well. But yeah, also on LinkedIn and
Sure.
all of that. But yeah, love to connect.
Emily, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. You were fantastic. I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that you want to be on the varsity team and are willing to exercise courage and tenacity and competitiveness to help a company grow. So thanks for what you do, and I appreciate it. Thank you for being a guest on our show today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us. That concludes another episode of our podcast. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care.